Hey, you guys, welcome back to the Teach Them Diligently podcast. We are David and Leslie Nunnery, the founders of Teach Them Diligently, and we are so glad that you have chosen to join us here today. Really excited about this episode because we're going to be looking at how to plan your homeschool year with purpose. In fact, we're going to go through 5 very strategic questions that you can ask to help really give purpose and format and structure to a very missional homeschool year. So you don't want to go anywhere. You want to make sure that you get that. We're doing this to coincide with our back to homeschool promotion. Every year we try to celebrate back to homeschool season. We mentioned in our last podcast episode that this is the first year in 21 years that David and I are not going back to school. All of our kids have now graduated and we are entering a brand new stage of life, but we are still excited to celebrate back to homeschool with you. So you can follow along with this promotion. We're going to be giving you all kinds of tips and tricks and missional ideas to really help you take advantage of this brand new, clean, no mistakes in it yet homeschool year. So be sure that you follow us on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or all of the above, wherever you like to get your content. Follow along there. We'll give you all the details about it. We'll even give you the opportunity to get these 5 questions in printable form. We're going to lay them out a lot more there as well. And you can enter to win our Back to Homeschool prize, which includes $250 in a gift card that you can spend on supplies or a retreat. You know, we used to like to do a back to homeschool retreat a lot of times where we would just go away for the weekend and really bring our kids into the mission and the vision for the year. We would have a blast, but we talk about goals and stuff like that. This prize could go towards that. So it's a $250 cash prize as well as an annual membership to Teach Them Diligently 365, which is the go-to homeschool and discipleship hub for this generation of Christian families. I wish that I had time to do a whole episode on why I am so passionate about Teach Them Diligently 365. But I truly do believe that every family needs to be in there. It will help you stay focused. It will give you community. It will give you accountability. It will give you the resources that you need to do what God has called you to do with excellence. So make sure that you click the link in the show notes. You can enter to win all of that now. You can get the download of what we're going to talk about and then follow along with us on all of our social media platforms so that you can really enjoy this back to homeschool time. So David, now that we are looking specifically at how to plan with purpose, before we dive into these 5 questions, which I'm really excited to share, what have you found kind of as you've been thinking through the summer about not going back to homeschool? But what have you kind of thought back to some of the things that were really impactful for us in some of our back to homeschool retreats or times or planning times or whatever?
Well, I think the retreats are just an amazing idea because there's a level of pause there that you actually focus on exactly what you want to do. And you have time to kind of think through some of these questions that we're actually going to be giving everybody.
And do it as a family. That's what we used to love to do, is bring our kids into the conversation because you get a lot more buy-in from them when you do.
Well, and let's face it, right? I just had a conversation with somebody who works for us, and she was saying that she had to work on her calendar for this upcoming homeschool year, and she started going through, it's just really hard. I haven't been able to do it. This has been happening and this has been happening. And she was like, I have told my husband that I'm going to mark this off. And the first thought that I had that went through my head was she needs a retreat. And I think that we even find this would Teach Them Diligently, and this level of we graduated our last one, but still our kids are coming back constantly. We're at home. There's stuff that is constantly happening. And so that's where these retreats actually come in really handy, is that you need this kind of step away so that you can actually think through some of this stuff, because you're not, these questions that we're going to give you, they take a little bit of thought.
Yeah.
They're not hard questions. I mean, they're definitely not hard questions,
right?
But you want to kind of think through them a little bit, and you need space to do that.
And so often, this really, we'll jump in with the first question, which is, what is God calling our family to this year? So really looking at missionally, what do we want to accomplish this year? So often, instead of looking at what's God calling us to do, or all of these other questions that we're going to go through, we jump straight into the do. How are we going to accomplish this? What are my lesson plans? Am I going to lay this all out? And that really lends itself to that conversation that we had last week, talking about what you believe, what you think, what you feel, and what you do. And we get those out of order so often.
Well, and a lot of times the answer to this particular question, what does God call me to do this particular year? The answer to that is, well, how many chapters am I going to get through in my particular
Am I going to
book?
finish this curriculum?
Am I going to finish this book? Am I going to be able to actually get through this book? If you're talking about algebra, which math curriculum am I going to do? Am I going to? That's where the thought kind of rotates around, and this is a little deeper than that. It's actually a good bit deeper than that. We're to actually, what has God called me to do? What is it in your child that you want to help them actually be able to get through? All those kind of things.
Yeah. So before we look at schedules and curriculum and that nuts and bolts type stuff that tends to derail all of our thoughts in this back to homeschool time, especially, we need to be aligned on what God is doing in our hearts and in our children's lives and in our lives, and how that all fits together. As I was thinking about this, I thought about what the Bible says in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, that if we trust in the Lord with all our hearts, He will direct our paths. The reason that I thought about that verse with this point is, so often we tend to want to see how we're doing based on a rubric from a system that we're not in anymore. So we're like grading ourselves against the school system or against what we think other people's expectations are, rather than looking at how we are doing based on the mission or the calling that God has on our family. And if we trust that God is wise and good in His call, we can trust Him to tie all of the things that we're doing together, all of those detours, all of those conversations, all of the ways that we're walking away from what we're doing to go after our children's hearts. We can trust that by the end of all of it, not only will we have their hearts, but they will have much more knowledge and much more understanding than they did when we started.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're kind of building that relationship. And the secret sauce in homeschooling is the relationship. It's the relationship with the children. It's actually being able to be with them more. And so while you are with them more, you are leveraging that to deepen the relationship. And so school doesn't happen through normal hours, right? It doesn't happen through a class time, kind of period. It's happening all the time. And so you're talking through this, and then you're relating it back to, the different struggles that your child has, what you want your child to learn just in terms of character and walking with the Lord. And you're integrating all of this. And so the relationships are the secret sauce in that. And that's what makes homeschooling so powerful, is the relationships.
Yeah.
Yes, the one-on-one, individual instruction is great. But really, the difference there between that and a normal school is not the one-on-one time. It's the relationship that develops out of that.
Well, and the insight that you get into each of your children because of that, which actually goes really nicely into our second question, which is, what spiritual goals do I have for each of my children? Have you stopped to look at not just, what do I want them to accomplish by the end of the year, but also what spiritual goals, what is God doing in their lives? Their character, their heart, their habits, all of those things, whether they are bending towards Jesus or we're starting to see them kind of grow away, all of those things matter so much more than academics alone. So we've got to start there with, what are we praying for our children? That's one of the things that I learned as I was writing the legacy Bibles for our kids through the years, was that God gave me a lot of insight into how to pray for my children as I was reading God's word on one of their behalf at a time. and I talk about that actually in the How to Create a Legacy book, or How to Create a Legacy Bible book. But we've got to actually recognize that our kids are growing and they are developing spiritually every single day. Now, homeschool is a phenomenal tool for discipleship. It gives us so many opportunities. It's just incredible. But ultimately, our call as Christian parents is to disciple, to go for the hearts of our kids. And so we need to start praying very specifically about those spiritual goals that we have for our kids. When our children were younger, we allowed them to participate in a club at a church that was 5-6 minutes from our house. It was called the Luke 252 Club. It was wonderful because it allowed them to learn verses. It allowed them to actually work with their hands, do a lot of stuff that was really, really good for them. And it actually allowed David and I to have a 2-hour date every Monday night.
It was on Monday nights, which was awesome.
It was just a great, great thing. But the reason that I bring that up is, as I was thinking about this point, Luke 2:52 is the verse that came to mind, because Luke 2:52 is happening when Jesus has been left at the temple. You know, everyone's marveling at him. And the Bible says that Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. And that's what we want to see our kids do. We want to see them grow, not just academically. That will follow as they are growing in wisdom and as they are engaging with people, as they are being discipled. The character, the hunger for learning is going to go along with that spiritual growth. But we need to really, really be tuned in to the opportunities that we have. So prayerfully evaluating what spiritual goals we have for each of our children is really important.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can almost talk about this not so much as what are your spiritual goals, which is a great question to ask, but I think that another question and another way to phrase this is, how are you praying for your children?
Exactly.
And I think you hit that head on when you were talking through this, is that this is actually being informed by the prayers that you have.
Yeah.
So there's a couple things that come out of that. Are you praying for your children?
Right.
You know, because that's really important to be able to do this exercise. You have to think about, what am I praying for my children, and how often am I praying, and what do I pray for them? And you should have different prayers for every single one of your children. They're different people with different skills, different abilities. God has a different plan for every single one of them that is not like the ones or any of your friends. And so you should have different, and they're different age levels. So
Right.
there's different levels of maturity there as well. You should have different prayers for every single one of your children. And I know, Leslie, that you put together a prayer journal. You put together different elements of prayers for your children. You're very disciplined in this and how you approach it. And I think that's really important, is being able to actually understand what your prayers are for your children.
Right.
And you have to be praying in order to be able to answer this particular question.
What spiritual goals, because the Lord is going to show you what those need to be.
Yes, the more you pray, the more the Lord shows you what these goals need to be.
Yeah.
So that's another element of this.
Right. And one thing that I learned that I wish someone had told me, so I'm gonna I'm gonna tie this to you right now. One thing that I've started doing now that my kids are adults, that I wish I had started when they were teenagers, is actually asking them how I can pray for them. I missed that element of it. And so I made a lot of assumptions as they got older. Now, I'm not going to necessarily ask a 6-year-old that. You can, but you're going to get a different type of an answer, as if you ask a 15, 16, 17-year-old, hey, how can I be praying for you? What are you working towards? What do you think God is doing? It will open the door for tremendous conversations. It gives you ways to follow back up with them. I text my kids and my in-law kids regularly, just how can I be praying for you? And that is giving me insight into how they are growing in ways that I missed when I was just making assumptions of how I should be praying for them.
So down the line, the ripple effect on that also is that I actually have our kids will ask me how they can be praying for me on a regular basis. And it's really a sweet thing because the text comes out of nowhere. And they will ask me, how can I be praying for you? And it is it's a sweet
It's
thing to be
precious.
able to hear that back from them. And it's not a response, right? Kind of like when you tell somebody to say hello, you
Yeah.
say hello to somebody and they say hello back. No, you ask them how you can pray for them, and then they tell you how you can pray, how you can pray for them. And then there's a little bit more there, and then the conversation kind of ends, and then later on they come back with, well, how can I pray for you?
Yeah.
Which almost has this comes out of nowhere kind of feel to it, but
Hmm.
it's such a sweet thing. And I just, you starting to do that has created that.
Hmm.
So it's been good.
Praise the Lord. That's awesome.
So start earlier
Yeah.
than waiting until your youngest has graduated from homeschool. So
You really, really will be glad that you did. So that second question again is just, what spiritual goals do I have for each of my children? Think through that. Have those conversations with them. Ask them what their spiritual goals are for themselves. Again, the more that we can engage with our children instead of speaking down to our children, we're going to find that we're equipping them to think biblically. We're showing them what we value. We're bringing them into the conversation, so they're going to have a lot more buy-in for what we're doing. And all of those things together will give you a much more peaceful, less friction-filled homeschool year this year.
Much more natural.
Much more natural. Much more natural. So the first two questions that we've gone through have been pretty positive, right? You're looking ahead. You're planning. These are dreams and goals type of things.
Mm-hmm.
This third one is a little bit more having to deal with stuff that could get you off track. But it's critically important that we do that too. So the third question is, what are my biggest distractions or stress points in what I'm trying to do within my home and homeschool? And how can I surrender those? Distractions destroy discipleship, period. If you are constantly distracted, if you are constantly overbooked, if you are frazzled and brittle, you are not going to have the same platform to disciple your children as if you are truly focused on the calling and the goals and so on that we were talking about first of all, or in those first couple of questions. Hebrews 12:1-2 says to run with perseverance the race that is set before me, fixing my eyes on Jesus, who is the author and perfecter of my faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. We have got to keep our eyes fixed on what is our call, on what is true, on what is honest, on what is, of good report.
Think on these things.
Think on these things. We have got to endure whatever comes our way. Jesus modeled this for us because at the end of the day, his ways are always best. And so keeping our eyes on him, removing anything that is getting in the way of us actually fulfilling that call is paramount to our success this homeschool year.
So I think that, it's probably important to actually pause for for a moment and actually talk about what is a distraction. And a distraction is anything that takes you off mission, right? It's anything that removes your eye from what Jesus Christ has told you to do. And teach them diligently, we simply state your mission is to bring your children to Jesus Christ. You can't save your children. You can't redeem your children. That is Jesus's work. And he is the one that will actually redeem them. That's the reason why he was sent. And that's what he did for you. And so your prayer is that he does that for your children. And your goal is to actually bring your children to Jesus Christ. And part of bringing your children to Jesus Christ is setting up the environment and setting up your home and setting up what you do in your home and in your homeschool and everything that involves with that actually fosters and nurtures this element of your children actually coming to Jesus Christ. And so a distraction is anything that gets in the way of you doing that.
Yeah.
And so you can have a lot of good things that can be a distraction. And so it doesn't mean that you completely remove that thing out of your life. That means that you put that thing in the right priority. You put it in its right place. You reduce its influence on your life, right? An example of this could be your cell phone, right? Your cell phone can be a distraction. It can also be an amazing tool. And so it is incumbent on you to make sure that it maintains its status as a tool in your life and not a distraction in your life where you're sitting there and flipping on YouTube constantly or flipping on Instagram constantly. That doesn't mean that you completely stay away from Instagram unless you just can't muster the discipline for that. But you keep it in this right position. You don't let that take control of your life. And so what you're doing is that you're keeping that from being a distraction.
Yeah. This is really where what we talked about last week about how what you believe impacts how you parent, period.
Yeah.
You're showing your kids what you believe by what is taking priority. So if distractions are taking priority in your life, you are showing your children that those things are more important than what you have stated you believe or you want to do. So it's very, very important that you align what you believe and you really, truly allow that to start impacting the decisions that you make. In the Heart School book, I position that as realigning your thinking. You've got to consciously make sure that you are lining up what you do with what you say, and you change your mindset on those things. So you need to identify what those big distractions are that are keeping you off mission, and then do whatever it takes to extract them from your life. Just put them to death.
Or put them to death or put them in the right order,
Yep.
right? It can no longer be a distraction.
Yep.
And I think that there's a lot of people out there that their life is just filled with distraction.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and that actually, again, feeds into once we figure out what our calling is, we're prayed about the spiritual goals that we have for our kids, we are figuring out what the distractions that would keep us on mission, then let's start to put it back together. So the fourth question is, how can I build rhythms that encourage spiritual, academic, and emotional growth? How can I be intentional with the time? Because routines that are built on purpose will serve you all year long. And I'm not getting legalistic about a calendar. I'm not getting legalistic about a daily schedule. Goodness knows I did that. I made all the mistakes with planning. Every single one. I'm pretty sure I've done them all. But what I'm saying is, how can you set in routines and rhythms in your family that really are life-giving and that are taking you in the direction of the mission that God has given you? Ecclesiastes 3:1 says that there's a time and a season for everything, every activity under the heavens. And what I find so often is, instead of allowing that time or season to kind of play out, we try to wedge everything in at once, or we try to keep up with the Joneses. And so our chapter 1, and we're trying to do what they are on chapter 7, and it just doesn't work out. So being content with where your family is, what age and stage you're at, letting your kids be kids and enjoy those moments. All of those things factor into creating a rhythm and routines that allow you the time to shepherd hearts, that give your kids the opportunity to build good habits, deepen relationships, and to also develop a love of learning that is going to help them do better and be better prepared for whatever God has for them in the days ahead.
I mean, I think that's great. And, talking about the relationships, I already talked about that being the secret sauce, but that's really where a lot of the power is. And, even things such as, you're correcting your children, it becomes so much more powerful when you have a really strong relationship with your child. The correction that you put in them is so much more powerful.
Yeah.
And so those relationships are super powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. So start thinking about how you can put in rhythms that really do encourage the spiritual, academic, emotional growth, because your child is a whole child. And when we start making just academic goals or just spiritual goals or just whatever, you're missing out on the fact that this is a whole child that you want to see grow. And you also want to see yourself grow in that as well. So set up, order your days in a way that is appropriate for the season that God has you in, but also is a way that feeds your soul and gives you time to do your mission throughout the day. And then number 5, ask yourself, what will success look like for us? If you don't know what you're shooting for, you're never going to feel successful. You're never going to know if you got there. And so what do you want to see in your children's lives, in your home, when you get to the other side? I was actually reading this morning in First Kings, and I was struck by how much or how easy it is to try to go our own way. I was reading about Jeroboam. Jeroboam had been told that he was going to have the kingdom, the 10 tribes, that he was going to be the king. And like almost right away, he was like, ooh, I got this, but now everybody's going to want to go back there. So I'm going to set up these idols so that they don't have to go back. And I thought, how easy is it for us as believers to understand our call and then to take this detour because we try to control things? We want to take matters into our own hands. So decide not to do that. No idolatry. Like seriously, be very aware of your natural inclination to take matters into your own hands and build your own idols within your family. Micah 6:8 tells us that God has shown us what the Lord desires of us: to act justly, to love mercy, to walk humbly with our God. Those kind of spiritual goals should be what you are looking for as your family is growing and developing through this homeschool year and throughout really the rest of your family, the rest of your lives. So, David, we've gone through these 5 things. What is at stake if a family doesn't take the time to think through this stuff?
Well, I mean, first of all, I like to address something. And as you're going through these 5 things, I like to talk about, the father and talk about the men. And the reason why I want to bring this up is because I actually, at our events, we're talking keynote speakers at our events, they will actually come to me as men and they'll say, what more can I do in homeschooling? And there's also this myth that when they start homeschooling as a family, that's kind of the wives and the moms' turf, and they don't walk onto it.
Yeah.
And so they will just kind of let her do her thing and then not really interfere at all. And my position on this, and what I'm trying to tell everybody out there, is that right now in these 5 questions, this is actually the perfect place that the father can influence and can do the most for the homeschool family.
Casting vision.
Yeah. Actually taking these 5 questions and asking them as he is going through them with his wife. He doesn't have to actually wrestle control of the homeschool away from the wife. He just needs to make sure, okay, what is our mission? And just work through those kind of things with the wife. And that is actually where he can make the biggest difference. This is not me saying because we are a people of extremes, I feel like I need to actually address this. I'm not saying that the father shouldn't teach any classes. Some of them will, some of them won't. That's great. And I think they should keep doing that if that's what they want to do. I can actually list some really infamous cases of me trying to teach and tutor the kids in their classes. That wasn't my biggest impact. My biggest impact was this missional stuff.
Yeah.
It was this actually talking through the vision. And in a lot of cases, I didn't actually dictate what the vision was. I just made sure that there was a discussion and there was a clear vision in what we were doing. And I would ask a lot of questions, and in some cases I would answer it, but it wasn't like I was wrestling control away from you and saying, this is what it has to be, or we're not going to homeschool.
Right. No, it actually was us getting on the same page, which then made me feel much more supported, which made me much stronger as I went through this school year, because I know every single time that we started out with the same goals, the same focus. And so when I would find myself drifting, you were always there to help me get back on track.
So this is what leadership is, right? Leadership is not the John Wayne model. It is not the model of trying to, you be General Patton and trying to just blow things up and then wrestle control, and you've done everything wrong and I just need to take this back. And that's not leadership. Leadership is actually casting the vision, or making sure that the vision is actually understood and going through this. And anybody can do this, no matter what your personality is. Whether you're one of the, I remember in Atlanta, we had the Benham brothers as a keynote. And a lot of the people, maybe you remember them and you don't, they're amazing people. But you had Jason and David Benham out front, and their families were all behind them, and they're marching down into the exhibit hall. If that's your personality, then great. But there's a lot of other guys that's not your personality. You can still do this. You don't have to be, forceful. Ask the right questions. Walk through this with your wife. Make sure that you're on the same page as what you were talking about. Make sure you're on the same page when things start getting rocky and you start doubting. Remind her of what the mission is. Remind her of how you guys have made decisions in light of what the mission is and how this fits. That's where you actually make the biggest difference, and you actually can really change things. And that's what I think the Lord has called fathers to do. So that's the first thing that I wanted to put out there. The second thing, when you talk about what's at stake, I think it's really hard to get away from this aspect of floating. If you don't do these things, you're going to float. And when I think about floating, I think about boats, on an ocean. And there's currents, there's all kinds of things, and they can be anchored. But that boat, if you do a time-lapse photo, right, that boat is moving all over the harbor. It's all over the place. And my point is that boats are going to be moved. They have to be steered. You got to have a motor on them. If they're going to go anywhere, if you want to direct them, you have to actually physically be active in that process. And that's kind of what I think is happening here. And so if you don't do these things, you're just going to float. If you don't understand what's distractions in your life, you're actually going to yield to them. And so you need to actually set forth a vision, and these 5 questions actually set that out. This is how you build a vision for your family and how homeschooling fits in. And if you don't do that, then you just float. And if you float, you're going to be shipwrecked. There's going to be problems.
You get really discontent. There's a lot of friction. So actually using this as a tool to build the vision for this homeschool year is really, truly will be impactful on your family. I think that you will just find it to be one of the best uses of time and energy of anything that you do all year long. So I can't encourage you enough to take these 5 questions, answer them personally. Everyone's answer is going to look a little different. And that's okay. God works in individuals' lives, in individual families, and we want to encourage you to build that out. But whatever you do, download this list of questions. You'll find the information in the show notes. Again, you'll find it on our social media. We're talking a lot about this stuff right now. And while you're there, be sure that you join our Back to Homeschool big promotion. You can enter to win a $250 gift card and an annual subscription to Teach Them Diligently 365, my personal favorite thing of all that we do, because it allows me to engage with amazing homeschool families all year long. Follow along with us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all the places, because we really, really, truly want to walk alongside you this homeschool year and, for years to come, encouraging you, challenging you, pointing you to Jesus, and helping you disciple your children through Christian home education and really thrive as a family as you do that. So we cannot wait to talk to you again next week and see what the Lord has for us there.